So we're back at the shop from Exclusive by Design. We got our wheels all ceramic coated by Emmanuel. We got some new coilovers on the Blit, some Stance XR1s. So we lowered it a bit more than last video. So we're gonna try our wheels on. We got those works and we're gonna see how they fit with the stock fenders. It's a beautiful day here in BC, looking into the sun, talking to you guys, so I gotta put some shades on. Anyways, here's our setup. It's an 18 by 9.5 Genosis GR204. The offset is plus 14, and we run at 215/40. That's kind of our go-to size, 9.5 width, 215/40 tire. You could run a 35 for sure. It just doesn't work that well on the daily. You know, we've run the 35s, they kind of like the sidewalls blow out, stuff like that. The 40 works well if you drive your car hard, and if you do the right stuff, you can get it to clear. So obviously, we haven't rolled the fenders yet. Everybody kind of knows you're gonna put wheels on, you gotta roll the fenders. That's a given. But this offset was semi-conservative for this car. It's kind of the same thing for like an IS300, you know, 9.5, 15. It sort of fits, but not really. So obviously you roll the fenders first, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna need some arms. Normally you run like a negative upper arm. I also have an extended lower arm for this for when we get the angle kit. So it's probably gonna have a good amount of camber by the time we're done with it. And the car is, you know, this low, not this low. So yeah, let's check it out and see how it fits. So now we got the wheel and tire on. You can see it kind of doesn't fit. Basically, the second you turn this thing, it's gonna rub. It's gonna rub when you go over big bumps. It's not actually usable. So what we're gonna do is roll the fenders first off and then see how it fits from there. But it looks like we're gonna need some arms and stuff. So yeah. Okay, so we're gonna try the rear wheels on. They're a 10.5 plus 17. I went with a bit more conservative offset just because I want them to fit, and I do drive the car every day, so I want it to actually work. The rear fenders on most cars will need to be rolled. Toyotas, generally, you can kind of just get away with an actual roll, but on the cars like the GS, the LS, and the Crowns, they have this trim here, and you can't actually roll the fenders without getting waves. So on those cars, we do just kind of cut them back, and then you get a nice OEM outer lip. Some people may argue that you can roll them, but you definitely 100% can't without any waves. So yeah, this car doesn't have that trim, so what we're gonna do is slice back here, roll it nice and flat. But first we're gonna try the wheels on and show you how bad this lip hits the tire. Damn, what do you guys think? Looks pretty sick, or does it? Well, yeah, you can see basically, even though with a stretch tire, this is a 225/40 on a 10.5. And yeah, the tire is on the fender lip, so no, you can't drive it. And by the looks of it, this is gonna need a decent amount of camber to actually clear this fender lip in. So some people might like that out lip look, but that's not a real practical sort of style for driving your car because it doesn't actually have travel. In our opinion, this needs to be able to go up to here. So you have to have full travel, rim lip inside the fender. So it looks like we're gonna have to run, I'm gonna say probably 5 degrees of camber to get this wheel on properly. Now we're getting it down to business. We're actually gonna do the work. We're gonna roll the fenders, and here's what I use. I've been rolling fenders since 2003. I've done almost every kind of car. Maseratis, Hondas, Toyotas, Nissans, Lexuses, Infinitis, like tons and tons of Supras, all sorts of stuff. So I've been around the block. This is a fender roller. You may or may not have seen one that looks like this. Yours might look different. This is an old school H&R one. Here's just a wrench to adjust it. You're gonna need a cutoff disc and some flapper discs. That is because you're gonna have to do some work on the fender itself to cut off some tabs and such. Safety glasses kind of go with that thing. You're gonna need some mallets. These are just crappy sort of like Princess Auto mallets that you round off. just so that you can kind of get in there and you don't have these weird hard edges that put dents in your fenders. And the most important thing is the heat gun. Even if you don't know how to roll fenders, you can kind of do an okay job as long as you take your time and actually use a heat gun. Just get a lot of heat into the fenders, take your time, and you'll probably get a fairly good result. And then just some screwdrivers and stuff to take off some of the trim on the front. And I forgot, you're actually going to need a knife because you'll need to cut back the front fender liner if you're keeping it. Most people would want to keep it. We usually cut it back about 2 inches or so because then it keeps all the dirt and rocks out from your door, but it allows the tire to actually go up in there. When your car is really, really low or you have lots of angle, etc., you probably won't be able to have a fender liner. But it is good to have on a street car just to keep the rocks and stuff out from like your headlights, your door hinges, and that sort of thing, your side skirts. Yeah, so this is what we use, and we'll show you how to properly roll fenders today. All right, so you probably noticed that I had my stock wheels back on. The reason for that is I know you're excited, you got your new wheels, you want to drive around with them, you want to have them on. I get it all the time. People put their wheels on and then they come to me after the fact. You know, you always have to roll the fenders first because the fenders will shred your tires, or you'll fuck up the fenders, you'll do something. Basically, put your stock wheels back on, get all the work done, and when it actually clears, then put your wheels on, because you don't want the lip to get scratched, you don't want the tire to get shredded, you don't want the fender to get cracked, like the paint to get cracked on the fender, and you don't want to buckle it, and you know, when you go to turn into the shop because you didn't want to take your wheels off, it pulls the lip and then just like destroys your fender. So always just put the stock stuff back on till you're ready, and then put the nice wheels on at the very end. All right, so what we're going to do first is take off these tabs, and we're going to cut the liner back to here. And then the metal that the tabs went into is going to get cut off flush to this line, this fender line. So we don't want to introduce any stress risers. So this whole fender edge has to be the same thickness. All right. So when you're going to cut the liner, you're going to use a knife. Knife plastic works pretty good. What works really good though, heat gun, knife. Don't go overboard, you don't want the blade to turn blue or anything, but this will make really short work of any plastic. So you can take this out and then you see basically how much you're cutting out. So you're gonna take your cutoff disc. I prefer these Makita super thin ones. I don't know the thickness, something 64ths, and I don't know, it's like a 5-inch wheel or whatever, and you just go to it. Just watch your fingers, and I guess, yeah, I've done this a lot, so I'm really confident with the wheel, but if you haven't done this a lot, just be careful, because you'll cut stuff like wires, your hood release, all sorts of stuff. I've done that before. So your wiper washer, you can cut that too, so you don't want to do that. So we're ready? We ready? So you get rid of your cutoff disc, put a flapper on, probably like an 80 or something, and just smooth it out. The problem with grinding or flapper discs or grinding discs in general, you always have to go into the paint, so that's upwards, but then this plastic shit's here, and I'm gonna go through that. So if I don't want to go through that, I gotta take this whole front part off. So I'm probably just gonna do that real quick. Okay, so here you can see where we need to put the little relief cut where the fender meets the bumper. So we've had to pull the liner back so we can get the grinding disc in here and just cut off this little sort of tab, and we'll show you how to do that. You're going to want to cut all this area off too, because your tire is going to need all this space to turn when your car is really low. So grind as much back necessary. You probably need to keep the actual mounting, but all this is unnecessary, so just grind it all the way back. All right, here you can see the divot that I've made. What you want to do is get close to the outer edge, but not come all the way out. That allows this part of the fender to bend up and this part to stay. So now that your fender edge is nice and even, just make sure there are no abrupt changes in width. So if you had cut into the width a little bit, just blend it with your flapper disc so everything's nice and wavy and smooth. You're just going to bend this up real slow, and I'll show you how to do it with the fender roller and the hammer. But the key is heat. I always heat from the back side, so the metal itself is hot, not just the paint. So basically the paint gets hot through the metal itself. So use some heat on the back, take your time. You don't want to bend more than maybe 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter at a time, or else you get paint cracking. So there you go. All right, let's fucking put this roller ass shit on here. Back in the day, people were hesitant about fender rolling, but this roller actually was in an H&R catalog, and the first photo was them using this on a Porsche. So it's like, they knew what was up, you know, back in like 03. But yeah, over the years, obviously people want to stance out their car, fit some big wheels and stuff, so everybody knows about fender rolling now. But what's the best thing about fender rolling? Bacon fenders. We're gonna show you how to not bacon your fenders. Okay, so you're gonna wanna start at like a slightly more of an angle as to what it starts with. Like obviously here is bent up more, here is not. So you kind of put it at that angle, and you're just gonna always work the wheel back and forth to make sure there's just minimal pressure. You're just gonna do a tiny bit of bending at a time. Don't go ham and just like reef on it, and then just, that's not gonna work out very well for you. You're gonna get paint cracks, it's gonna be all wavy. Slow and steady wins the race with fender rolling, absolutely. So take your heat gun, heat it up, roll it bit by bit. On the front, you might need someone to hold the steering wheel if you can't lock it into the center. But if you're experienced, you can kind of just use the roller tension itself to kind of keep the roller centered on the fender, because obviously if the wheel's turned, you're not going to get roll here, you're going to get roll here, and it's not going to be even. So the wheel has to be straight. So yeah, let's try that. Heat it up. So you're gonna heat it up, and you're gonna ask me, oh, how hot do I get it? What temperature? I don't know what temperature it is. Basically, if you can't touch it from the outside, that's perfect. But you don't want to get it so hot that you bubble the paint. If the car has original paint, you're gonna have a successful result. If the car doesn't have original paint, there's probably Bondo on the fender edge. The new paint probably sucks, and you're gonna get bubbles or cracks or all sorts of, I mean, I've had fenders break chunks off before. But yeah, basically heat it up, go like this with your palm. If it's too hot to keep on there for any amount of time, then that's perfect. So yeah, you always just gotta like get it cooking, man. And I usually use a glove because I have to hold this part when I hammer it. So I'm probably gonna have to go grab a glove. Ooh. Yeah, buddy. So what I normally do is the two edges. I start with my bigger mallet. So I'm going to take this edge and sort of, so we're going to start bending this edge in with the hammer, which is going to blend it into this already bent factory edge. And then right here at the front side where we've made that divot, we're also going to take our smaller mallet, start here, bend this edge up to match this already bent edge. Grab something so that you can put your hand on the fender where it's hot, kind of use a hammer dolly type of effect. Here's the dolly, here's the hammer. Up, kind of hammer. So you can see now it's bent up, I don't know, 10, 15 degrees. It almost matches this factory edge, and we're probably gonna stop there for the front, and then we're gonna move to the back. And then once the back has also matched the angle, then we bring the roller in and do the whole edge together. Always keep your heat gun moving. Don't hold it in spots, because you will burn the paint, and it really sucks when you do that. So we're going to take this edge, bend it up to match this edge. Start from the bottom, slowly going up. And what you want is a nice smooth transition from flat to rolled. So this is good for now, and then we'll bring the roller in, do the majority of the fender, and then readdress the front and the back part again. Cool. Dumb fucks. You always want to keep the wheel moving, and you want to work it back and forth depending on the pressure. You want to keep the same tension start to finish. You don't want to put too much in one spot and then it's going to, you know, bow the fender out. Like I said, slow and steady. Let's get ready. Okay, so you guys might be thinking, oh, those wheels totally could have fit. I could have just pulled my fenders to fit those wheels. Yes, you can. But I mean, that just achieves a different sort of look. We sort of go for this like really clean OEM look. I don't really like the fenders to be, you know, duck-billed or visibly pulled. We always try to keep this nice fender edge if the car has it. It just goes for like a nice clean look, and it looks like the wheels actually sort of cohesively fit the car versus like you just butchered your fenders to get the wheels on. I mean, that's some people's shtick. It's not mine. We're basically showing you how to make your car look really clean and sort of like, I don't know, nice. All right, so now you can see that the fender edge is nice and rolled. It's relatively flat. We do leave a gap at the back so you can clean it with a wire brush. If you fold it completely flat, it's basically just gonna fill with dirt and it's gonna be a lot weaker. What you want is a nice rolled edge for the tire to rub on when you do turn. That way it doesn't cut your tire, it doesn't catch the fender, and it can just sort of like rub on there real nice. But yeah, so now we're gonna try the wheel on, see how much better it fits. So, we got our rolled fender, we got our work wheel 18 by 9.5 plus 14, the 215/40. Does it fit better with the fender roll? Absolutely. See, now you can see there's, you know, I get my pinky between there. You probably got a few degrees of turning over bumps. It definitely can drive straight without rubbing now. It's not gonna rub the liner. It might rub a bit here at the fender, or sorry, bumper. You know, might need a bit of extra trimming. But in my opinion, it's still not that great. If you can't turn and drive hard, it's not technically fitting. I would probably add another 2 degrees worth of camber onto this just to give it, you know, a bunch of room at the top. Now, Serial 9 style, you definitely want most of the wheel outside, so we would probably, you know, there is a bit of an adjustment on the LCA, so you can either pull that out or pull that in. Normally we pull that all the way in and then add an upper arm as well, so that pulls the whole wheel in, and adds camber if you have an adjustable upper arm. Anyways, it definitely helped. Now it's safe, it's not gonna get shredded, but I still probably wouldn't drive it like this. So we've gotten the fronts done, now we're moving to the rear. The rear is a little bit, I would say, easier. Most cars that have the fender that goes all the way down, like a G35 or like a Supra, or, you know, there's a few cars where the bumper doesn't bisect the fender. That's the easiest fender in the world to do, because it's always just a nice clean edge. You just fold it up, Bob's your uncle, you're done. This car, so IS300, all the JZXs, most Nissans don't have that fender trim that we were talking about. It's like the GS400, LS400, SCs, I'm pretty sure. So they have that screwed on trim and they have those holes, and that makes the fender impossible to roll without waves. Luckily, we're not working on that type of car. We're working on JZX. So we're just gonna take this nice fender edge, fold it up. The only thing to take into account is where it meets here, we do have to make a relief cut so that this can fold up without pulling this part with it. Because you'll notice on a lot of rolls, you get this weird kind of bowing out portion here. That's because they didn't make the proper relief cut in the back, and yeah, the metal has to follow this when you bend it. So one very important aspect of rolling your rear fenders is cleaning it out. I've seen dudes basically just go to town rolling it, and then there's all these weird bumps and stuff on the outside, and it actually turned out to be sort of like caked on dirt or mud. So as you can see, there's always stuff in here. So you want to clean it out nice, make sure it's, you know, good. And then when you fold the lip up, you're not going to get all that crap inside. And also when it gets wet, the mud is just going to rust out the fender. So it needs to be clean. It needs to be, you know, clean. The purpose of the relief cut is to let this metal bend up without pulling this metal with it. So you're going to try to get this pretty close to the outer edge, kind of like so. Well, let's just color this whole fucking thing in because it looks like garbage. So it's gonna look like that. Yeah, we will take the bumper out as well because obviously the bumper will need to be matched to the new fender edge. So this actually will probably get cut like so. Yeah, and even just down here, probably even like this, honestly. Because this is essentially the back of your fender, so you're just gonna cut that to match your new edge, and that's what we're gonna do right now. That's what we're gonna do right now. So the rear is pretty thick, it's double wall, so you're gonna use a new flap disc. I use a 40 because it does a lot of work really quickly, and then just sort of like finish it off with a rounded off 60, 80. Actually, it's a 40, but it's rounded. So brand new, does a lot of work really quickly. You definitely got to be careful because you'll grind right through if you don't know what you're doing. Always wear your glasses and give a shit. You can see how we've cut it out close to the outer edge. So that's about the thickness of the fender after we roll it. So that allows this to go up without pulling the metal here and making it go in. So we'll cut this after with a knife or with the grinding wheel, whatever, but we're gonna concentrate on the fender edge first. We have our fender roller on and we're ready to start rolling the rear fender. Now, first things first, lots of heat, backside, can't touch it. That's when your temp's good. And then start at an angle that's pretty shallow to the existing angle and just go back and forth, work the wheels, you know, in and out, keep that tension steady and just go slow and we'll see how it goes. Oh, and also car in neutral, e-brake off, of course. This is obviously a lot harder with a car that has like an LSD, like a two-way or something, and you do want to probably just take the other wheel off because if you have an LSD and you're going like this, you're moving that other wheel back and forth. It's kind of heavy, kind of hard. So yeah, neutral, e-brake off, other side wheel off. Let's get into heating, bro. Okay, so if you have short stroke suspension like me, it's gonna be pretty hard to get the roller into the correct angle. So it helps if you just start with the hammer to get the first couple of degrees out of it, and then it's pretty easy to get the wheel kind of at the angle you want it. So just back and forth slowly. You're gonna probably get, I don't know, 5 to 10 degrees, so a couple millimeters. So yeah, that hammering allows us to get a shallower angle on the roller. Work the wheel back and forth, adding more pressure bit by bit. Always kind of keep it moving, and you just slow and steady, that's it. Yeah, so when you get down to this area, you will have to pull the wheel out a little bit, extend it, because obviously now that your car is slammed, the distance isn't concentric. I mean, it's not normally anyways. But yeah, use your judgment, keep the same pressure on the fender, just constantly moving it. As you can see, the fender is actually naturally coming out. When you roll a fender, it inherently just kind of gets pulled a little bit anyways. You usually get about 5 millimeters of extra clearance. You're not like duck billing it per se, but you will get more clearance just by rolling it. So yeah, we just kind of go back and forth, add a bit more angle, and kind of see where we end up. One thing I wanted to point out is any car that has the bumper come fairly high up on the fender, you can't really pull the fender much anyways, because you get this relationship of like nothing, 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 and then everything. It looks terrible because you can't pull this portion out and this to make it look congruent. If the fender went all the way down, no problem. You could do a nice gradual pull, maybe like 15, 20 millimeters without making it look totally different. You could totally do that. But what's gonna happen if you try to pull this fender is it's gonna be flat and then out. And it looks pretty bad, in my opinion, so, yeah. So as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, when you roll the fenders, it still will pull it a bit. And as you can see now, you have a pretty weird relationship from this vertical line to here. So it kind of comes outward. what we're gonna do is actually hammer this part back in so that it looks a bit nicer. All right, so I'm just gonna put some tape on here so that when I hammer it doesn't scratch the paint. Make sure this is clean, and I'm gonna hammer this bulged out portion back in. Be very careful and only concentrate on the lower edge because you will dent this. That's what you don't want. All right, so what we're gonna do right now is finish it up by blending this bumper into the fender roll. So we just have to cut those little parts that we've marked previously, and we're gonna do that now. Okay, so you use heat, and like I said earlier, I'm gonna heat the blade up as well. Be extremely careful doing this because it'll go through really fast. It'll also go through your nail or your skin really fast. So now that we've cut it, we're done, and we're gonna try the wheel on again. Last thing, sorry, spray this with rust paint. Where you've ground it, the front, the rear, always spray it with rust paint because it's raw metal. And we're gonna try the wheel on now, see how it fits. Looks like it almost fits. So what do you guys think? Looks pretty sick, right? Almost sick. So the fenders are rolled, the wheels are on. They kind of fit. This lip is definitely going to hit the fender if it compresses enough. So like I said before, it has to be able to fit in. Otherwise, you're going to ruin that fender lip or the rim lip and the fender edge. The front definitely doesn't really fit, so it looks like we need arms. So maybe next episode should be put some arms on the car, lower it a little bit more. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments section below.